My thanks to Christina and Champlain. They did a wonderful job of promoting the film, and thank you all for coming. I'm very thrilled to have you here. I hope you had some fun with the film. Hope you were entertained a little bit and chuckled along the way and learned a thing or two, and who knows what sort of motivation might happen as a result of seeing this. But if I could just take a minute and sort of fill you in as to what's happened since the film was finished. So the film had its worldwide premiere at the Woodstock Film Festival in Woodstock, New York in October 2012. And then a few months after that, an urban premiere in Washington, D.C. at the Ecological Film Festival of our nation's capital. And at that film festival, I met a distributor based in San Francisco named The Video Project, and it took 5 months, but we organized a contract, and he's my distributor on the film, focusing in on the college market and the library market, nonprofits, government, high schools, and community screenings throughout North America, which includes Canada. So that happened. That was in the summertime we had the contract, and I made their fall catalog, and it's been going on ever since. And of note that in the summertime in September, Mayor Bloomberg addressed a very critical part of the film. Actually, it's the part of the film that has most time, which deals with the EMS vehicles. There's 800 of them throughout New York City, burning mostly diesel fuel 24/7. And he signed a bill 218 that allocated dollars to test mega batteries in the back part of EMS vehicles. And they're testing 12 vehicles right now to see if it works. If it works, they're going to roll it out. I should also tell you that I'm in touch with another group that has another test contract to create electronic kiosks on the streets of New York City, on the curbs of New York City, where EMS vehicles can plug into those kiosks and not burn diesel fuel. And that's an important step. It's in a test mode, so we'll see. I guess they're almost vying to see which is going to work or not, the mega batteries versus the plug-in kiosks. I just came back from California. In November, the film had a screening in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, under the umbrella of the Heinz Foundation, as in Heinz Ketchup. And they love the film, and they're supporting it in the Pittsburgh area, which is great. And I came back from California a month ago, and this film screened at the biggest ecological film festival in the West, which is called the Wild and Scenic Film Festival outside of San Francisco, and 400 people filled the seats to see the film, so it really was the biggest audience so far. My distributor released the film in October. I released it on Amazon just last week, so now that's a thrill. And as mentioned in what you saw, there's a companion children's book to it, Big Nose, Big City. And the children's book's interesting in that the problems that were shown on the screen deal with the adult's perspective, a human's perspective. The book takes the perspective of a bloodhound dog, and just think a human's nose is 5.5 feet off the ground, a dog's nose is right at tailpipe level. So it's a read to book from an adult to a child. And that's available on Amazon too. And we're selling copies of both out in the lobby afterwards, as well as T-shirts. So again, my thanks for all that you've done. Greatly appreciate it.
Would you be willing to entertain a question or two
Absolutely.
from the audience?
Absolutely.
So, anyone have a burning question? Dan Hollis, please.
Dan.
I'd like to hear more about your lifestyle in general and what else you do to reduce your footprint.
Well, I haven't had hard meat in 40 years, if that matters from a cow production perspective.
Yeah.
And okay, I've been recycling, within my building ever since it's been law in New York City, which I think is about 12 or 13 years. So you divide paper and metals. I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car in 15 years or so. And I only did it when I had to move to Pennsylvania on business for about 18 months. I had to have a car. But I would never want a car in New York City. So all those ways, I'm a public transport fiend. I take subways in New York, which is actually the way to do it. It's so great. They're ubiquitous, and they're fast, and so there's no reason to have a car in New York City just as a carbon consumer, you know. And I get to speak to people like you, encourage you towards that sort of mentality. Yes, sir.
Curious if on your journey with this you found any similar projects going on with like, say like construction vehicles or like office buildings that are in transition and not being used. If there's any laws or legislation saying that you can't heat a building if it's not being used, anything like that.
I don't know about that, but as you saw, Isabel, who's I consider the star of the film, after we worked so hard on idling, she went right into bunker fuel, which is number 6 fuel, and she worked to have laws changed in New York as well as Albany to have number 6 bunker fuel phased out. 70% of the air pollution in New York City comes from buildings. And it was the number, and she did the analysis to figure it was the number 6 diesel fuel, which is the densest, nastiest fuel. That was the primary cause, and she worked diligently to address that, and she got more kudos in the film for that. So, but that doesn't answer your question about abandoned buildings, and I don't have the answer there.
I just wanted to comment first that I really commend you for this, and I thank you for it. And I don't know how you had the time, since I understand you were at least early on a working person.
Still am.
Undertook this.
Yeah.
And I know it's stressful. Idling drives me crazy, and at times I have gone up to people and said it's really stressful to have that encounter. And I know I over Vermont printed some cards that I continue to use. But my question, it's sort of minor in all of this, but that chlorine thing, I mean, I can't imagine that it's desirable to be, is he saying that there's something being done with chlorine, that engine, which has all these estrogen mimickers in it?
The one, he says it smells like chlorine. It was clean diesel. It's a technology.
But, so it's not actually utilizing chlorine?
Not to my
and
knowledge.
spewing chlorine?
No, but it smells like chlorine. Yeah, but that's a real technical point. I don't have the answer to that particularly.
It's
But
actually,
but again,
Is
thank you
what?
for
it's actually
doing
ammonia.
this.
The reason it smells like chlorine is the clean diesel. There's a certain kind of ammonia that develops,
Ammonia,
and it smells like chlorine in the tailpipe.
yeah,
But clean diesel is sort of an oxymoron, but they are a little bit better.
yeah. Well, I brought that in. If you saw, the film was divided into 3s, the beginning, middle, and end. And the end had somewhat of solution-based mentality as it went along, and that was one item.
Something right there.
Yes?
So do you think de Blasio, the new mayor, is going to be an ally? And I'm also wondering if over time you've found a cadre of people to help you out, because I know as a person that also knocks on windows here in Burlington, it is tiring, and it's important to have sort of a support network, particularly with Isabel back in Switzerland.
Life changed, well, that's been a hardship. Life changed, though, when she came on board. And so when we formed a team to make that happen. We exchanged emails every day for 2.5 years until this thing got to where it had to go, to where the mayor signed the bills. And she would tip me off. So a lot of the footage there, she'd call me and say, hey, there's on the steps of City Hall, there's something going on, you should be there. I got my camera and went there, not knowing exactly what was going to happen, and all this great footage happened. So we were working in unison that way. I can't say that I had an army of helpers out there who were knocking on windows.
What do you do now? I'm wondering if you've developed a cadre of.
Well, I contend that this film and the companion children's book are tools that are unique. They've never been developed before, and in combination with my distributor, as we go out into the marketplace, which has just begun, to have more college screenings, to have more library screenings at churches, they've come up as big customers. Who would have known it? As that word gets out, there'll be people saying, I'm going to start bugging my congressman. I'm going to start bugging my local selectman, or whatever the case might be, because I'm not going to tolerate anymore. So the tool is the attention and awareness tool. The activist button gets pushed when people see this, hopefully. So I hope that it'll have that echo effect. You throw the pebble in the pool and the ripples go out. I'm hoping something like that happens, and I have a feeling it might. Yes, sir.
Do you know of any national efforts that are going on against idling, or is it mainly local?
Well, there's 30 states that have laws.
Right.
So that's good. And so, when I tell you every day I got an email from someone that's seen the film or seen the book or has heard of something or went to the website that give me questions saying, what about Seattle? What about Wichita? And so this is happening all the time. So that word's getting out there and we'll see what happens. So 2 years from now, tune in.
How did you keep from getting too discouraged and giving up, especially in the beginning? Because some of these problems seem so astronomically big, and you were able to make a difference, which is completely and totally awesome. And just, where do you find that sort of ambition to keep going?
That's a real deep question, but
Sorry.
for better or for worse, I don't give up on things. I just never have. So I'm a cross-country runner in high school, So, you don't give up when you run 2.5 miles. And so, but it's just sort of a thumbprint that I have. If I get onto something, it's like a bulldog. I just don't give up until I get there where I want to go. So that, and I've been very graced in my life in many, many ways. So I built up confidence that I can get things done.
What do you think the outlook is as far as this spreading and being recognized and enforced everywhere?
Like a national law? I don't think a national law is going to happen, but word of mouth is the best form of advertising. So if someone sees the film and you go back to your dorm tonight and go, I just saw this film that is just sort of strange and interesting and provocative and pumped me up, they'll say, what is it? And you'll say, well, it's a cold idle threat. Go to the website and see the trailer. They'll go to the website and see the trailer, and you've hooked someone. So, that's what a momentum thing is all about. So I think I've got 2 tools that will create momentum to have word of mouth, conversations, debates. And from debate and from conversations, things spring. So I'm very confident that I'll have a great impact. But I was born that way.
Maybe one more question and then we'll
Yeah.
keep moving along.
Hi. Yes, sir.
Hi. I saw the stats on the idling decreasing over the 3 years you had data. Do you have any sense of whether that's decreased enforcement or decreased infractions?
Decreased enforcement. Because I don't think that right today, I don't think that they're enforcing the law at all. And I just don't have the answer why. I have some suspicions as to ideas as to why, but that's speculation. But,
Do you
Mr.
think the
Bloomberg
cell
paid
phone
lip
tool
service.
that you could have volunteers use to document infractions to kind of show that the infractions aren't changing would be helpful in pointing out to the government that their reductions are due to reduced enforcement and not reduced infractions?
Oh, frankly, in the case of New York City, I think the answer is to make a private force to do this, where they gain revenues for their own selves, and then they'd be unleashed, and the problem would be like a bell curve. There'd be an enormous amount of tickets. It would reach an apex, and then there'd be a decline in tickets, but it would solve the problem within 18 months, 2 years. Bingo, no one would idle because they'd be paying an awful lot. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. And George will be here for more questions. And So we're fortunate this evening because we have a few folks who are with us to talk about what's happening here locally. And unfortunately, we had one person. Oh, don't leave. There's so much more. Not so much. Just a little bit more. Unfortunately, someone who is not able to join us this evening is Wayne Michaud of this organization, Idle Free Vermont. And so I encourage you to take a look at what is happening statewide with Idle Free Vermont as one example. But next, I'd like to bring up Rebecca Ryan from the American Lung Association, and she's going to talk about some of the Vermont initiatives statewide, and then we'll hear from Jennifer Green briefly about what's happening here in the city of Burlington. So we'll turn it over to Rebecca, and let me pull up. Would you like to have that?
Not quite yet. But I can
Okay.
hit the start button.
All right, I'll let you do that.
I really encourage you to spend some time on Wayne's website. Wayne is Vermont's George. He's been really focused on reducing idling in the state of Vermont for at least 10 years. So I'm sorry you couldn't be here either. I was reminded of a short story I'll share with you at towards the end of George's film. A couple years ago, and Jennifer, you're going to hear from next, might remember, when we tried to start this coalition, this idling reduction coalition, and it was the Sierra Club and the Lung Association and Wayne and some other folks, and I don't remember what triggered it, but I got a call from a local reporter that wanted to do a story on idling. I think there might have been an air quality alert or something that day, but she called me and I said, well, I'm on my way to Waterbury. I'm going to an idling meeting, and she said, you meet and talk about idling? And it just struck me, this is really a simple thing. You just need to turn the key off, but we as humans make it so complicated. So I'm gonna just quickly tell you about the laws in Vermont around idling, and then show you some of the things we're doing to educate people, mainly truck drivers, because of the diesel emissions are so dangerous to lung health. But in 2005, this is not idling, but I think it's a really important bill that people don't know about. Vermont passed a law we called it the Smoky Truck Bill. And if you see black smoke coming out of a diesel truck, you as a citizen can get that license plate number and call the Department of Environmental Conservation, give them the license plate number, and they'll send them a very nice letter, I've done it myself, to the company or the driver, and that driver has to have his exhaust tested, his emissions tested. So I think that's a good thing to do, and a simple thing that you can do as a person who lives in Vermont. In 2007, the state passed a law to limit idling on school property of school buses. Wayne is currently working very hard on that with schools to make sure they're complying with that law. And then last year, we became the last state in the Northeast to pass a law to limit diesel truck idling. And that will be effective May 1st. The legislature decided, and this was really a lobby effort from the Vermont Truck and Bus Association, which is really interesting, to expand that to all vehicles, because they felt that if truck drivers have to comply with an idling law, then all cars should do it. So it's a really good thing, and it'll be effective May 1st. But as you have seen from George, that enforcement is an issue. So we are working with a UVM extension. It's called Certification for Sustainable Transportation, and if you go to erating.com, you'll see the program. It's like the LEED certification for buildings, but it's focused on the transportation sector. And they are developing, we're going to kick this off probably in March, a program for us that will be free to all Vermont truck drivers and fleet managers. And it's a self-paced online program that will look at the economic benefits, the environmental benefits, and the health benefits of simply turning your key off. And I'm going to show you just a short clip of one of our board members, Dr. Jerry Davis, who's a pulmonologist at UVM. So there's inserted at UVM, there's inserted within this training several clips from folks like Dr. Davis. He's going to talk about the health message, but we have a driver from Green Mountain Power, and a driver from Burlington Electric Company, and another driver from Fairpoint, talking about why it's important for them to turn the key off. So I'm going to show you this clip.
Any immediate questions for Rebecca or the American Lung Association?
Rebecca, the state law has so many exemptions in it.
Mm-hmm.
How did all of those exemptions come about?
Yeah, most of those exemptions mirror what the state was going to do with regulations. So they were considered necessary idling. Now, I know one of them, I meant to look at them again before I came over tonight and forgot, but I know one is it's going to expire because it's the sleeper berth exemption, and soon most trucks will have the APU to run that without the main propulsion engine. But the one that was really silly was lobbied by, I forget which organization, but whoever represents the car dealers in the state, and they wanted to be able to idle their engines while they're moving cars and clearing snow in the morning on the lot. So that was the one that seemed really unnecessary to me. The rest are, I think some could have been eliminated, but most of them are just the kind of the business end of having to run an engine for inspections and so on.
One of them seems to say that if your vehicle has a gross vehicle weight of less than 10,000 pounds, you can idle it in your driveway for,
Oh, yeah. You're right. I forgot about that. The legislature was concerned about enforcing laws on people's private property. Right. So, however, there is another law that's often overlooked, that you cannot run your engine in the state if the car is unoccupied. It's a safety issue. If there's no one in the car, you cannot, this has been a law for decades, yeah, that you cannot have your car engine running. Again, it's not very well enforced, but it's a safety issue, and I mean, those poor little children in New York City, that, you know, it's really important that law be abided by as well. So that should address that. But then you get off on this, you know, then there's the car starters, the remote car starters, which a lot of people use to start their engines from their office or their house. So it's a problem.
More verdant vigilantes amongst us, I
Yes.
guess. Anyway, thank you, Rebecca. So next we'll bring up Jennifer Green from the city of Burlington. And those of you who are 7 Days readers, totally coincidentally, there was an article written 2 weeks ago and posted about our idling law that we have and kind of what's happening with it now. And Jennifer was part of the original team who really helped bring this law to Burlington. And I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks,
for a
Christina.
minute. And actually, if you don't mind,
Oh, sure. I guess
it's just for
yeah,
recording
of course.
purposes.
I really want to thank Christina, and I'm just so happy to meet George. I think I saw your trailer. Maybe when the movie first came out, someone sent it to me, and I felt like I had found a kindred spirit. So, and I do remember reading that blurb in the New York Times in the Metropolitan Diary section. So I feel like I've been following you over time. It's just really great to meet you. So I think in the few moments that I have, I would say I need your help. So I am Christina's counterpart. I work for the city of Burlington, as she mentioned. We have an anti-idling policy. I don't know if there are any reporters in the room. Are there?
The one just left.
Right. The police are not enforcing our laws. And I really think it's important that sort of we take the matter into our own hands, much as George had. Now, once upon a time, we had little red cards that mirrored this, and on the other side explained the law, and people had them and they handed them out and they put them in windows and handed them out to drivers. Those cars have sort of dissipated, and honestly, sort of energy around our idling campaign has sort of dwindled. For better, things come and go, wax and wane, and it's really hard to keep the pressure on. So I see a potentially fabulous Champlain College effort. Together we can get our cards remade. We can come up with a service learning project that would allow students to help write several op-ed pieces, get a blog site up and running, rehook up with Rebecca and the American Lung Association to bring more attention to the issue. Because we have so many things that we're dealing with in the city. It's hard to find a window of entrance and where you're going to make change, but I think this one is like presenting itself on a silver platter. And I have to say, I do think idling is a kind of a gateway issue. I think if we all turned off our cars tomorrow, we wouldn't solve climate change, but if we did turn off our cars, it might lead to a change in the way people think about transportation, and it may make a change in the way people think about public transit, and it can have this ripple effect. Just the way I think if we were all to start composting tomorrow, it would be important, but it wouldn't save the world. But compost, I also think it's a similar sort of gateway opportunity. If we start composting, we're suddenly thinking about food and local and using our dollars here at home to stimulate the economy. So I think that the idling piece is something that can have a positive effect immediately, and I think it can have bigger ramifications. So I think I'll just leave it at that and say, if anyone wants to figure out a means by which we can rekindle some of the anti-idling work that we had started in Burlington, and again, which waxes and wanes, we're kind of on an upswing now, but give it a couple months, it's going to sort of fall out of vogue again. I'd love to work with Christina in developing something together. So, anybody have questions about Burlington's law?
Not
Just-
about the law, but about the enforcement.
Yeah,
You're a city official.
correct.
Are you an elected official?
No,
You're an employee.
correct.
And what's your title exactly?
Sustainability coordinator.
Great. Do you have the muscle to talk to the revenue side of the city and say, create a 5-man force, and that's all they do is to collect fines. And what is the fine?
It's the same as a parking ticket, so $15.
$15. To give your 5 people a 6-month window to write as many tickets as they can for this infraction, and I bet you the revenues would increase significantly, and you get a lot of attention because you'd be raising revenues and you get a lot of press,
Yeah.
and it will snowball that way. Do you have that sort of muscle to push that through?
I think the muscle is with a group like this. I mean, I can only say it so many times, right? But when the public steps forward and says, come on, you guys, it's on the books. And by the way, Mayor Weinberger, we can save some money. We have a mayor who's really motivated to balance our books and to be fiscally responsible. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about sort of the kind of financial gains that we can make from this issue.
Jennifer, would you suggest,
Oh.
Would you suggest a group of students show up at the city council meeting?
Yeah, I think we can tackle it in a slew of different ways, and I think showing up at a city council meeting is great. I think you can even, I'm thinking of 2 or 3 city councilors who would be very open to meeting with students and working together, which may be a better way to go about it, to form a team or a coalition. Because there's nothing better than having an advocate city councilor talk to other city councilors, and that's often how lasting change happens. I mean, descending on a city council meeting is also a tactic, but we can use the city council in other ways as well, I think.
Jennifer, within city government, has there been any effort to recruit or encourage or enforce no idling in city vehicles? Because really you see a lot of city vehicles idling in the city, and even there was actually a letter in response to this in the 7 days today about that, pointing that out. And if people see city vehicles idling, as I think was in your film as well, it doesn't encourage them to think positively about turning off their car.
Yeah, it's true. And I do get calls on occasion, or I get emails that eventually make it to me. There was a city vehicle idling in front of Henry Street Market recently. So got a hold of the guy at DPW who went out to talk to his team, and then went out to see if there was an anti-idling sign. So they went and installed one. But it's a constant reminder. We've done eco-driving training for the staff of BED, the people with the biggest vehicles, BED, Code, and that's Department of Public Works, the Burlington Electric Department, and maybe Parks and Rec. I'm forgetting now. We did an eco-driving training, which partly involves anti-idling, but it's constantly reminding people. So and I'm really curious, we did meet with the folks at UVM who are developing this new sustainable transportation certification, and I'm so glad to hear that it's going to be offered free, because we haven't.
Just our program, I think there's a fee for the whole
Okay, yeah.
certification, but just for our training.
So we do need to remind people, I guess, to your point.
Right.
It's constant reminding. And I will go and speak to the department heads at a department head meeting and remind them yet again. I think honestly, because we don't disincentivize people not to idle. We spend a lot of money on gasoline for our city vehicles. And I guess if I wasn't paying for gas in my private car, I'd probably be a little more flippant about driving. But I do pay for gas, and I know how much I pay for gas, and so I am encouraged to turn off my car and not to drive needlessly. I walk or bus or bike whenever I can. When you're not responsible for paying that bill, I think it makes it even harder to encourage people to turn off their vehicles and to encourage saving money, because they're not feeling the impacts of buying gasoline. Yeah.
Has there been any thought on those automatic shut-off devices?
Yes. The police now, if they don't all have them installed, was that in the article? Did anybody read?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not in the article. So the cherry picker that we use at BED, they do have the automatic switch off, and we're working on that in the police vehicles. And there are cities around the country that are leading the charge. So the technology is available. It's just a matter of making it a priority for the vehicles that we drive in the city. And I want to say something about the police department, but I don't know for sure about where that is, so I'm not going to answer that question because I don't know where it stands. George?
Yeah, it's a couple of ironies. The film was about New York City, which, you know, out of all the places in the United States, you wouldn't think that a documentary on an eco issue would take place in New York City, because it's just an anathemas, so to speak. But you've got, in the national consciousness, you've got two states, as far as I can see, that are leaders in eco thought, which is Oregon and Vermont. And so we're here in Burlington, which is the hub of that sort of thing. If you can't organize some great thinking around this low-hanging fruit in Burlington, Vermont, then where else can you do it? I mean, this is the place.
Well, and I do want to just say we have made a tremendous amount of progress. There is much happening, but it takes constant work. So it's not just putting up signs. It's not just on occasion the article in the paper, or reminding the department heads, or offering eco driving, all of which we've done. It's doing it all the time. But I'll tell you one thing that I could really use help on is getting some more of those cards printed and being able to hand them out. Because people do call me, that I just saw a truck idling, what am I supposed to do? Well, have you, approach the vehicle, talk to the driver. So we just, we've got to give people a venue and a way in which they can help support the effort. And I think that's where we're falling short.
So I teach an environmental issues class, 10 of those students
Oh,
here.
great.
So I would definitely be interested to team up and maybe have this group at least brainstorm some ideas.
Okay.
And I'm also teaching environmental issues next fall.
Okay.
Where we could potentially have a service learning project for this issue.
Great. All right. So we'll connect.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, so in closing, and just mentioning that you can take your part if you haven't already. There is a national pledge of not idling, and it's just iturnitoff.com. So for those of you with a smart device or a good memory, can go back and then take a pledge here now to join this national effort of supporting that. And they theoretically send you a free sticker that you can put on your vehicle or your skateboard or your bicycle or whatever you get away to get around with you. So there is that. And then in final closing, we have prizes.
Prizes.
And you have to be here to win. So for those sorry people who left earlier, they're going to lose out. So Jeff Peterson is still in the house, though. Way to go, Jeff. You get this fabulous bag of eco prizes. All right. The eco prizes. So thank you all for coming. Some of our guests are still here. Get your last burning questions in, and travel safely home on foot, wheel, or otherwise.